I want you to, like, completely erase the modern world from your mind for a second. Um, we're going to travel back in time,
Oh, I love when we do this.
right? So we're going back roughly 30,000 years, landing right in the middle of the Ice Age.
Freezing cold.
Exactly. You are sitting by a dying campfire. You're a soft, furless human, completely vulnerable in this environment. And just beyond the edge of your firelight, there's this freezing, absolute darkness.
And you know what's out there.
Yeah, in that dark, you know for a fact there are predators that can smell you from miles away. I mean, you are basically surrounded by survival horror.
It's a terrifying visual, honestly.
It really is. But then you see it, just amber eyes catching the ember glow. A wolf is watching you.
A massive Ice Age wolf.
Yeah, an apex predator with these massive jaws, built for terrifying endurance. But instead of attacking you or, slipping back into the shadows, this wild creature does something totally unthinkable.
It steps forward.
It takes a single hesitant step toward the warmth of your fire.
I mean, that right there, that is really the ultimate inciting incident for our entire species. That one tiny moment of hesitation, of stepping toward the light instead of away from it. It sets off this massive biological chain reaction.
It alters the trajectory of two entirely different species forever.
Completely.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to figure out how that terrifying Ice Age predator somehow turned into the animal that's probably sleeping on your couch right now.
Or begging for a treat in the kitchen.
Exactly. It's this accidental story that's hidden in ancient DNA and Ice Age graves, and it basically flips everything we thought we knew about domestication on its head.
It really does.
We've got evolutionary biology, archaeological records, genetic sequencing to unpack today, and it all points to a very, very different narrative than the one we usually hear.
Yeah, we do have to start by kind of dismantling a rather large historical misconception here, because we have this tendency as a species to think of ourselves as the grand architects of nature,
We like to think we're in charge.
Right. So the standard narrative we all learned, probably in grade school, is that our ancestors went out, bravely captured some wolf pups, tamed them, and then intentionally bred them over generations to, like, invent the dog.
I literally had a picture book showing a caveman raising a wolf pup in a cave.
We all did. But what's fascinating here is we didn't do that at all. We did not domesticate wolves.
Wait, really?
Wolves domesticated themselves. We just provided the campfire and, well, the garbage.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because if humans weren't actively capturing and breeding these animals, how does this transition even begin?
Right. It's a huge shift in thinking.
I look at an Ice Age wolf and I see a pack hunter, a top-tier predator. Why would an animal like that suddenly decide to settle for our chewed-up mammoth leftovers? Feels like an evolutionary demotion. They're basically acting like accidental freeloaders or like roommates who showed up for free pizza and then just never left.
It totally looks like a demotion until you really look at the caloric economics of early human life.
Caloric economics. Okay.
Yeah, so during this period, humans were living as hunter-gatherers in these small bands, maybe 20 to 50 people, and they were moving constantly across enormous, brutal landscapes.
Chasing food, basically.
Exactly. And humans, by nature, are incredibly messy eaters. When a band of humans took down a large herbivore, they couldn't consume every single part of it.
Because they couldn't freeze it or preserve all of it?
Right, and they lacked the jaw strength to crush giant femurs, so they left behind cracked bones, scraps of tough meat, skins, and these partially eaten carcasses.
So a human camp is essentially just a mobile food source.
It's a rolling buffet across the tundra.
Yeah.
And in the dead of winter, hunting live prey it's incredibly dangerous for a wolf, and it burns a massive amount of calories.
Scavenging is just easier.
Scavenging from a human garbage pile is energetically cheap. But here's where evolution steps in and acts as this huge filter.
Because approaching humans is still dangerous.
Highly dangerous. Humans have spears, they have fire, they're very unpredictable. So when wolves started approaching these camps, their natural personalities dictated their fate.
Meaning the aggressive ones didn't do so well.
Oh, the highly aggressive wolves that came in snarling and looking for a fight, they got a spear through the ribs immediately. They got killed.
Whoa.
And on the flip side, the incredibly terrified, skittish wolves, they just stayed far away in the dark and got absolutely nothing. They starved.
So you're talking about a very specific behavioral sweet spot here. Like, they had to be not too aggressive, but also not too shy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just brave enough to run in, grab a bone, and run away without provoking a spear throw.
That is such a wild visual.
In animal behavior, there's this concept called flight distance, basically. How close an animal will let you get before it turns and runs away.
Like squirrels in a park versus squirrels in the woods.
Perfect example, yeah. So somewhere in that ancient wolf population, a few individual wolves were just born with a slightly shorter flight distance. They were, a little less fearful, slightly more curious than the rest of their pack.
And they hit the jackpot.
They really did. They stayed close, they ate the leftovers, and because they had this steady food supply that didn't require risking their lives to take down an elk, they thrived.
They survived the winters.
Survived the winters, had way more pups, and then they passed those specific, less fearful genes down to the next generation. Nobody was actively selecting them. They were selecting themselves.
So the campfire basically became the laboratory.
And the human garbage pile was the breeder.
Man, I can follow the logic for how their behavior changed, right? Like the friendliest, bravest wolves get the most food. But there is this glaring physical gap here that I really struggle to get past.
The anatomy side of it.
Yeah, it makes total sense that they got tamer over time. But how do we go from a massive, narrow-chested predator with upright sensory ears to like a barrel-chested pug with a squished face, floppy ears, and a curly tail?
It's a huge physical leap.
Right. How does a change in personality, literally just being less afraid of humans, somehow rewrite an animal's entire anatomical structure?
It sounds like magic, but scientists have actually watched this exact biological process happen in real time.
Really?
To understand it, we have to talk about Dmitry Belyayev.
Okay.
He was a Soviet geneticist who, in 1959, started this massive multi-decade experiment in Siberia, and he used silver foxes instead of wolves.
Why from foxes?
They're related to wolves and dogs, but they had never been domesticated. He basically wanted to figure out the exact mechanical link between tameness and physical domestication.
And he did this entirely through selective breeding, right? Like
Yeah.
without any modern genetic tampering or CRISPR or anything.
Purely old-school selective breeding.
So how did he actually measure tameness in a wild fox?
He used a very simple but incredibly rigorous scoring system. As the fox pups grew up, researchers would just stick a thick gloved hand into their cages.
Sounds risky.
Oh, I'm sure they got bit plenty at first. Because if a fox bit the glove, it was instantly excluded from the breeding pool.
Makes sense.
And if it just cowered in the back of the cage shaking in absolute terror, it was also excluded. He only took the foxes that showed, some curiosity or a willingness to approach the hand, and he bred them together.
And then just repeated it.
Every single generation, he repeated the test. And here's the key. He didn't teach them tricks. He didn't train them to fetch or sit. He selected purely for one single behavioral trait: the lowest levels of fear and aggression.
Our sources indicate the timeline on this was incredibly fast, too. Like, within just 10 generations, these foxes were wagging their tails, whining for attention, licking the researchers' hands.
10 generations is a blink of an eye in evolutionary terms.
But the physical changes are what I find so hard to reconcile. Because just by breeding for friendliness, suddenly their ears became floppy, their snouts physically shortened, their fur even developed these spotted patches of white.
The piebald pattern, yeah.
Why would a fox's ear flop over just because it likes people? That makes no sense.
Right, it seems completely disconnected. But this is a phenomenon that biologists now call domestication syndrome. And the whole mechanism behind it involves something called neural crest cells.
Okay, let's break that down, because neural crest cells sound a bit abstract.
Sure. Think of neural crest cells as the master control switches in a developing embryo.
Okay.
So as an embryo is forming, these specific cells migrate to different parts of the body, and they tell those parts how to develop. They help form the adrenal glands, which are what control adrenaline, the fight or flight response, fear, aggression.
So they build the fear system.
Exactly. But, and this is the crazy part, those exact same cells also help form physical traits like facial cartilage, jaw structure, and even skin pigmentation.
Oh, wow. So the switch that turns down fear is wired to the exact same circuit board as the switch for cartilage development.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. You literally can't touch one without bumping the other.
So when Belyayev is breeding these foxes,
when he selected for calmer brains and smaller adrenal glands, he was inadvertently selecting for altered neural crest cell function.
which means the cartilage gets weaker.
Yes, When you dampen the adrenal system, you accidentally weaken the cartilage in the ear, causing it to flop over. You accidentally shorten the jawbone. You disrupt the pigment cells, creating those white spots.
That is unbelievable.
You select for a behavioral trait, and you basically get a completely remodeled skull and body as a free biological side effect.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if selecting for tameness literally changes the shape of a skull and the flop of an ear, that means their actual genetic code was being rewritten by those ancient campfires.
Yes, on a molecular level.
We aren't just talking about, like, behavioral habits being passed down from mom to pup. We are talking about hard DNA evidence.
And modern genomic sequencing gives us the exact receipts for this. When scientists sequence the dog genome today and compare it side by side with modern wolves, they find these massive defining genetic shifts.
Give me an example.
Let's look at a specific genetic marker. There is a gene region in dogs known as WBSCR17.
Sounds like a license plate.
Right. But in humans, a mutation in this exact same genetic neighborhood causes something called Williams-Burren syndrome.
Which, if I remember the sources correctly, is a condition characterized by extreme, almost indiscriminate sociability, right? Like, people with this syndrome often have basically no social anxiety whatsoever.
Yes, extreme hypersociability. It's this deep, overwhelming desire to interact with others, even complete strangers.
And dogs have this.
Dogs have an altered version of this exact gene region compared to wolves. So the evolutionary filter of the campfire essentially hardwired a genetic condition into the dog population that makes them intensely social and trusting.
They literally evolved to love us.
Pretty much. But there is a second genetic shift that tells us exactly how they survived alongside us, physically, and it involves a gene called AMY2B.
The starch gene. And I actually have to push back a little here because wolves are strict carnivores.
Very strict.
Their digestive tracts are optimized for breaking down raw meat, fat, and bone. So how does a strict carnivore suddenly develop the ability to digest, like bread and potatoes?
It comes down to random genetic duplication errors meeting a brand new environmental pressure.
Meaning the garbage piles changed.
Exactly. In nature, genetic mutations happen constantly. Sometimes a gene just gets copied twice by mistake during reproduction. Most of the time, this does absolutely nothing.
Right.
But early dogs started developing multiple extra copies of this AMY2B gene, which is what produces amylase, an enzyme that breaks down starches.
But why would that specific mutation take hold in the population?
Because of what the humans were eating. As early humans started foraging more roots, tubers, and eventually grains, those leftovers ended up in the garbage pile.
Ah, so a normal wolf couldn't eat that.
Right. A wolf with a normal carnivore digestive tract eats a discarded tuber and gets very little nutrition from it. But a weird mutant wolf with extra AMY2B copies, it suddenly has access to like 30% more calories in that exact same garbage pile.
Which means it survives the harsh winter.
Survives the winter, has more pups who inherit the extra gene copies, and over a few thousand years, the entire population can digest human starches way before human agriculture was even formalized.
Now, a 2016 study published in the journal Science adds this massive wrinkle to the timeline.
Oh, the Newgrange study.
Yeah. Researchers managed to sequence the genome of a 4,800-year-old dog found in a passage tomb in Newgrange, Ireland. And by comparing that ancient DNA to modern dogs and modern wolves, they basically built this huge evolutionary family tree.
And the shape of that tree is completely unexpected.
It really is.
It shows this really deep genetic split between Eastern and Western dogs that occurred thousands and thousands of years ago. The data strongly suggests that dogs self-domesticated not just once, but twice, completely independently.
So once in East Asia and once in Western Eurasia.
Yes.
So you're saying that on opposite sides of the globe, two completely separate populations of ancient wolves made the exact same calculation.
The exact same one.
They looked at a human camp, realized the caloric economics were in their favor, and just walked into the light and went through the exact same biological transformation.
When evolution runs the same experiment twice in totally different environments and gets the exact same result, it tells you that the environmental pressure was incredibly powerful.
It was basically inevitable.
And there is a rather haunting detail hidden in that ancient DNA, too. The specific lineage of Ice Age wolves that stepped into those camps 30,000 years ago,
Yeah.
they are completely extinct in the wild.
Wait, what about the wolves today?
The gray wolves alive today in places like Yellowstone or Siberia, they're distant cousins. They are not the direct ancestors of dogs.
Wow, so the original wolves that made that first step into the firelight, They no longer exist in nature.
No.
The only place their specific lineage survives is inside the hundreds of millions of dogs walking around on leashes today.
They are living biological artifacts, and this actually brings us to a major theory proposed by anthropologist Pat Shipman.
Right.
She looks at this timeline and proposes that dogs weren't just pets, or even just passive scavengers for early humans. They actually functioned as a biological technology.
I mean, if you think about the physical limitations of an Ice Age human, we're kind of pathetic.
We really are.
We have terrible night vision, our sense of smell is practically useless for tracking anything, and we are incredibly slow compared to almost everything else out there.
But a dog fundamentally changes human capabilities.
Instantly.
They can smell predators from miles away, they can hear a twig snap in pitch blackness, and crucially, they change the energy expenditure of hunting.
Because the human doesn't have to run as much.
Exactly. An early human doesn't have to chase a wounded animal for miles, burning precious, hard-earned calories. The dog does the running, holding the prey at bay until the human just arrives and finishes it with a spear.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Shipman's hypothesis essentially argues that Homo sapiens were able to survive the Ice Age and ultimately outcompete Neanderthals specifically because we had this biological technology and they didn't.
Right. Neanderthals were physically stronger, they were way better adapted to the cold, and they had survived previous ice ages just fine on their own.
But we had a perimeter defense system and a tracking tool that conserved our energy.
It was a mutual survival pact. We provided a steady source of calories, and they provided the sensory awareness that we completely lacked.
But, you know, an alarm system is only useful if you actually care about the alarm.
Very true.
If an early human and a dog are just using each other for calories and protection, when does it cross the line into actual affection? Because we actually have physical proof of exactly when that line was crossed.
You're referring to the Bonn-Oberkassel grave site in Germany.
Yes. This is an archaeological site from roughly 14 to 16,000 years ago. Inside this grave, archaeologists found the skeleton of an older man, the skeleton of a woman, and buried carefully right beside them, the skeleton of a dog.
And just burying a dog with humans is significant on its own for sure. But the detail that changes the narrative entirely is what researchers found when they really examined the dog's bones.
It'd been sick, right?
Very sick.
Yeah.
This dog had suffered from canine distemper when it was just a puppy. And canine distemper is a severe, brutal, viral illness. It causes high fevers, vomiting, diarrhea, seizures.
It's awful.
In the wild, a sick puppy with distemper dies in a matter of days. Period.
But the bone analysis showed this dog didn't die quickly. It actually survived for weeks, possibly even months, with this debilitating illness before it eventually passed away.
Which tells us a story of immense human effort. I mean, think about it. Ice Age humans, people who were struggling just to survive themselves in this punishing environment, had to make a choice.
They chose to save it.
They chose to spend their limited resources, their own food, and their precious time nursing a sick animal. Someone had to physically clean that puppy, bring it water, chew up food for it, and keep it warm for weeks.
And a sick puppy offers zero practical utility.
None.
It can't hunt. It can't guard the camp. It is a pure drain on resources.
Exactly. So this wasn't about a survival pact anymore. This was about attachment. It was love. And modern science actually backs up the depth of this feeling.
With the oxytocin loop.
Yes. When humans and dogs lock eyes, both species release a hormone called oxytocin, and it is the exact same neurochemical loop that bonds a human parent to their newborn infant.
And wolves don't do this.
Wolves do not naturally do this with humans. Dogs do. Over thousands of years, evolution literally hacked our neurochemistry to make us love them. And vice versa.
As beautiful as that bond is, the historical record takes a fairly dark turn in recent centuries.
It definitely does.
Because for tens of thousands of years, this relationship was based on mutual survival and function. But as human society industrialized, the partnership became incredibly asymmetrical.
We shifted from selecting dogs based on their ability to survive and do work to selecting them entirely for aesthetics.
How they look.
Right. We took control of their genetics to create shapes and sizes that appealed to us visually, often with severe, painful consequences for the animals themselves.
The structural changes we've engineered are so drastic. We bred bulldogs with heads so large and hips so narrow that they frequently require surgical intervention just to give birth.
And we bred dachshunds for elongated spines. It's a form of intentional dwarfism called chondrodysplasia,
which gives them horrible back problems.
Highly prone to ruptured discs and chronic pain. We created brachycephalic breeds, Flat-faced dogs like pugs and French bulldogs.
Right, where you can hear them struggling to breathe.
Their snouts are so compressed, their airways are literally obstructed. They struggle for oxygen their entire lives. We basically took an animal optimized for survival and totally reshaped its biology in ways that often cause it physical distress.
And that is just the purebred side of the equation. There are currently hundreds of millions of stray dogs globally.
It's a massive issue.
These are animals whose ancestors surrendered their wild instincts, their ability to survive independently in nature based on a biological gamble that humans would provide for them. And for a huge portion of that population, the human end of the bargain simply isn't being held up.
We failed our moral obligation. We invited them to the campfire, fundamentally rewired their DNA, and then in many cases, left them to fend for themselves in concrete environments they were never evolved to navigate.
So what does this all mean?
Well, I think the most profound part of this entire 30,000-year history is that their internal programming hasn't actually changed. Despite the physical alterations and the abandonment, dogs still possess this stubborn biological optimism.
They still look for us.
You can approach a dog that has been entirely neglected by humanity, and it will still seek connection. That ancient oxytocin loop, that genetic memory of the firelight, it's so deeply embedded in their genome that they literally cannot stop seeking that partnership.
It's incredible. So to sum this all up, the animal sleeping on your rug right now, twitching its paws while it dreams, is carrying an immense historical legacy. It is the living, breathing shadow of an Ice Age predator that made a permanent bet on humanity.
A bet that changed the world.
So the next time a dog gives you those classic puppy dog eyes to beg for a piece of food, just remember that you aren't just seeing a cute trick. You are witnessing a highly specialized 30,000-year-old evolutionary adaptation designed specifically to hack the human heart.
It really is. And, we spent this entire time marveling at how wolves adapted to human technology, the campfire, to basically domesticate themselves. But I want to leave you with a final thought to consider, something we haven't really touched on yet. If an entire species can fundamentally alter its brain chemistry, its physical body, and its social structure just by living adjacent to our technology.
I want you to, I see where you're going. Completely erase
what
the
is our
modern world
current
from your mind
technology
for a second.
doing to us?
No.
As we
We're gonna
sit in
travel
front of our
back in
glowing
time.
screens,
I love when we do
our
this.
modern
Right, so
campfires
we're
getting
going
fed
back
exactly what
roughly
we want
30,000
by
years,
algorithms that
landing
ensure
right
we
in the
never
middle
have
of
to
the
hunt
Ice
for
Age.
information
Freezing
or face
cold.
intellectual
Exactly.
friction.
You are sitting by
It
a
raises a
dying
massive
campfire.
question. Are we
You're a
currently in the
soft,
process of
furless human,
self-domesticating
completely
ourselves?
vulnerable in
30,000 years ago,
and just
a
beyond the
wild
edge of your
predator
firelight,
stepped out of the
there's
freezing
this
darkness
freezing,
and into the light of a
absolute
human fire.
darkness.
And you know
And
it's
neither
out there.
species had
Yeah,
any
in that
idea how
dark,
completely that
You
single
know
step
for a
would
fact
reshape the world.
there are predators